everything, and everything is born out of him. The first part of the
And he's the source of everything. I mean, the spiritual world, the material world, everything. Already, just hearing a few of these qualities, we can see no one's equal to him or greater than him. Everyone is subordinate. Go ahead.
The first part of the translation from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1 says, O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifest.
So this is the first verse, first chapter, first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So write that down. So you want to know where is the Sastric evidence. So we're writing it down. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. And it says that he is the source of everything. In other words, everything's coming from him. Okay? So he must have an amazing body because everything is coming from him. Everything spiritual and everything material. So he's the source of everything. Go ahead, what else did it say? He's the source of everything.
Yeah, and then he is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
So he knows everything. We already said he has complete knowledge, but he knows everything. He's conscious of everything in the material world and the spiritual world. Go ahead.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
So he is the absolute truth. So there's nothing relative about him. In other words, he doesn't depend on anything else. He's completely independent. Go ahead.
And it is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge onto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being.
So that means he's the original guru of everybody. And Brahma is his first disciple in the material world. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just put down like a few of the first lines from the translation.
Okay.
So the Lord is, and that's in the Lord is seated as Paramatma in everybody's heart, and he can understand the mood, thoughts, and situations of countless living entities.
You can count what?
No, he can understand the mood, thoughts, and situations of the
The
countless.
mood, thought, and situation, right?
Yeah.
So Krishna is in the heart of every living entity as Paramatma, and he understands everything about you or me more than we do. Right. Okay, are you writing that down? Huh? And he's in the heart of every living entity, and he's fully conscious of everything we do or think. Did you know that? Krishna knows everything you do and everything you think. Whoa, you can't get away with anything. He knows when you do your homework, when you don't do your homework. Go ahead.
The third quality is that the Lord is also the supreme controller of the universe, and that he is the maintainer and instructor of humanity. The Lord himself speaks the Bhagavad Gita to teach us how to get rid of our sufferings and come back to him.
How to get rid of our sufferings?
Yeah.
Is that suffering? Is that what you said?
Yeah, suffering.
Suffering.
Yeah.
How to get rid of our suffering. Yeah, so he teaches us how to be happy always. So the problem is, whenever we try to have sense gratification, it always is followed by misery, because it's the law of nature. And most people don't understand that, or don't want to understand it. When you hear it, you say, "Oh, that's not fair. I don't accept that. I'm gonna be the exception. I will only be happy. I'll never and whatever I do will never be followed by misery." Well, no, that won't happen. Anytime we engage in sense gratification, it's always followed by misery. You should test it out. do some nonsense and see what happens afterwards. So, but better not to do that. Okay, go ahead.
The fourth quality is that he is smaller than the smallest. In the purport it says, the living entity is 1/10,000th part of a tip of the hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Therefore he is called smaller than the smallest.
Now, where did she get all this information? Do you have an idea?
Probably from the Bhagavad Gita.
What?
The Bhagavad Gita.
No, but where in the Bhagavad Gita?
8.9.
What? 8.9? Yeah, so did you read 8.9?
Yeah, the purport was there, but like it only talked about the smaller than the smallest.
That's all it talked about? No, it talks about a lot of things. Number one, it says, God is not impersonal or void. Then it says he's a person. Then it says he's Kavi. He knows past, present, and future. Now you could have, the homework was read this one verse and read the purport and then write down the unique qualities of God. So you didn't even have to do any research.
I don't think I read the whole purport.
That's the point. So when you say you're going to do your homework, so I actually make it easy for you. So okay, read this 8th chapter, 9th verse, and purport, and write down the unique qualities of the Lord. You didn't even have to do any research. You just have to go through this and make an outline of all the points. And then another thing, he's the oldest person. He's also the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He's also the supreme controller of the universe. He's the maintainer and instructor of humanity. He's smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th the part of a tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. The whole thing is right there. You could, it was so easy to do the homework. You see? You weren't paying attention. You were paying attention to other things.
I was on database. I don't think I scrolled down.
You were on database.
Yeah.
That will just get you confused. There's too much information there. This one verse here and purport has everything in it. It keeps going on. Go ahead.
Therefore he is called smaller than the smallest. As the supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything.
Wow, look at it. These are all unique qualities. It's all right there. Keep going.
The fifth quality is that by Krishna, all these planetary systems are sustained. Creating and destroying something is very easy, but maintaining something is very difficult. And that is why Lord Vishnu does it. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.42 says, He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the maintainer of all in the universe, appears in different incarnations after establishing the creation, and thus he reclaims all kinds of conditioned souls among the humans, the non-humans, and the demigods.
Okay, so, and that was what's the reference again?
And that's Srimad Bhagavatam 2.10.42.
Very good. So that's research. She did some research to prove that he's sustainer of everyone, right? Okay, go ahead.
So we can understand the supremacy of Lord Vishnu, who expands from Lord Krishna, who is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead and the possessor of unlimited qualities. That's it.
Okay, so you missed some points then. It says that he pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. Right? And then he's also we cannot understand him simply with logic and reason or modern science, because he's beyond everything. And then, so therefore, he's achintya, meaning that you cannot, he's beyond the material world. So how can you understand something that's beyond the material world? We don't even understand what's in the material world. How are we going to understand what's beyond it? Right? So therefore, we have to receive knowledge from bona fide devotees in the parampara, coming originally from Krishna, to find out and begin to understand what is beyond the material world. Right? And so then it says, therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useless argument and speculation should accept what is stated in the scriptures like the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead one to understanding. So, this one book has all knowledge in it. If you learn this one book, you will be more than a PhD in life science. How to live, what's the life science? How to live life successfully. So the obstacles to this are many. There are many obstacles to hold you back from living life successfully and attaining liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So the whole plan of modern education is to hold you back from attaining liberation from the cycle of birth and death. That's the whole plan, so that you don't attain liberation from birth and death and you stay in the material world. And how is that? Number one, what they teach you in school is there is no God. Now you might say, well, no, they don't know. I mean, they don't say anything about God. Of course they do. They don't teach you anything about God. So that's denying the existence of God, the most important thing in your life, your relationship with God. And they deny it. You're not allowed to talk about God. Or if you talk about some God, it's the God of the American Indians. Hoo, 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 hoo. You know, they make some noises like that, and they're worshiping the big spirit or something like that. So they'll talk about American Indians, but they won't talk about you know, the existence of a personal God, and his name is Krishna. So now, am I right or wrong? Did they talk about God in school?
Yeah, like we had a unit on
You had what?
We had a unit on like different countries, gods.
Okay, so what did they say?
Well, they said that the god for Hinduism was Shiva.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
We did a culture unit, and then it was talking a lot about like Brahman in the video that they showed for the Hindu philosophy.
Yeah, that's Mayavad philosophy.
Yeah.
No, but do they talk about other religions? About your place?
Yeah, we did a few like Christianity and like Jews and Islam.
And what?
Islam, like the.
So what do they say?
Like just like the origin stories and.
What?
The origin stories of each religion and like what they're about.
What stories?
The origin stories.
Origin?
Yeah, like how they started.
So what did they say about Christianity?
There was like this guy called like Abraham, and I forgot like most of the story, but like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do they talk about God?
A little bit, but not much actually.
Right. Did that make any impression on you?
No.
The whole thing is a joke. No, but basically, they treat religion as a story, not as fact. And they basically put all the emphasis on science and logic and reason, but not really on understanding who God is, the unique qualities of God, and therefore it doesn't make any sense, right? How about you, Krishna one?
Yeah, bro.
Huh?
Yeah, they talk about God, but in like a third-person view, and they talk about like their cultures like Islam and Hinduism and stuff, but they view it from like a third-person view, and it's kind of like
Who's the third person?
like us, like the readers, and it's like you said, it's more of like a story, treated like a story, and then they're like when the Enlightenment values came in like from Europe, then people's ideas changed and went more to science.
Right, that was John Locke.
Yeah.
They talk about John Locke.
I may have heard his name once, but I don't remember.
How about Krishna too?
Yeah, similarly, like, they just kind of treat it as like a story. They don't even talk about it that much. Like, maybe in like humanities, because sometimes they talk about it, but not really. And they don't really like believe in God, so yeah.
So the whole purpose of modern education is to hold you back from obtaining liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So first thing they do is they don't take God seriously, and basically they imply, by the way they talk about it, that there is no God. It's just a story. Everybody has got their own story. The American Indians have their story, the Jews have their story, the Muslims have their story, the Christians have their story. But what's much more important than those stories is science. Would you agree with that? No?
No.
Well, when you say, I don't say, do you agree with that in the sense that do you accept God is more important than science? But the school tries to convince you that science is more important than God.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. They don't explicitly mention it, but I feel like, I guess that's what they have to do.
Yeah, a lot more
Our
emphasis
curriculum.
on science.
Okay. So the first point that they let you, let's say, imbibe by osmosis. You know what osmosis is?
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with Moses. Right? What's osmosis?
like, I think it's when like water goes from less solute materials to more solute materials.
Filtration, kind of, where it goes through membrane.
Goes
Yeah.
through membranes, exactly. So over time, by going to school, you sort of get the feeling that science is much more important than God. That God is a story. It's not factual, right? And it's something that we can't really understand because it's beyond us, and it's not scientific, because in science you can, so-called modern science, you can measure things, you can understand the qualities of something, but you can't do that with God because it's just, there's no scientific basis to it, according to them. And this is based on the pedagogical theory of teaching. So pedagogy means how you teach something. So the system that they have adopted is called humanism. Now let's look that word up, humanism. Have you ever heard of this before? No. The basis of modern education, whether it's the United States, or it's Europe, Australia, or even India, is atheistic humanism. What's it say?
An outlook?
Now the way they describe humanism, it sounds good, but you need someone to help you understand the words. So go ahead.
Humanism. An outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural
Okay,
matters.
right away they're denying God, and they're saying everything is based on the human being, right? and they don't make any reference, they don't give any importance to God. So read that sentence again.
Humanism, an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural matters.
Okay. So that means all these supernatural things like, you know, Abraham and Moses, or Allah, or Krishna, or Buddha, or any of these things. These are all stories as far as they're concerned. But the humanistic theory of knowledge is that one should ignore everything related to religion and God and just deal with the individual. Okay, now read some more.
Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems.
Okay, you see? So, this was started by Aristotle 2,500 years ago. This shift from leave God alone, we'll never really understand anything because it's not subject to measurement and empirical understanding. So you have to understand what the word empirical means. E-M-P-I-R-I-C-A-L. Empirical means what you can understand with your senses. So, what can you understand with your senses? It's very limited what you can understand with your senses. Why? Because we know that the senses are limited. We know that we make mistakes. We're easily illusioned. Our senses are limited or imperfect, and we have a cheating propensity. So that will disqualify us from trying to figure out who we are, what is the purpose of life, where we came from, where we should go, or what goals we should aim for in our life. We will not be able to figure it out by ourselves. Some people say, no, we can do it, but all the philosophies that have come out of individual humans, like Socrates, and there was Aristotle, there was Plato, and then there are all the modern philosophers, they've all basically just speculated. And they come very short as far as understanding what is the real human destiny. So, this humanistic education is atheistic. It rejects any valid way of looking at God and understanding, or the science of God, or science of Krishna, and just focuses completely on the individual and how to speculate, and this was basically emphasized in the Enlightenment period in the late 17th and 18th century. And the leader of this, the charge to deny, the dogma of the church and to be a free thinker was John Locke. And John Locke was the man that influenced the most the young American, country, and especially George Washington and Jefferson and all these people, and many of his thoughts and philosophy entered into the Constitution of the United States. You don't know this, but later on you'll learn this in school, maybe. And Locke was a guy who rejected any church dogma and things like that, and wanted to be a free thinker, which means he's a free stinker, because he's going to speculate, and that he claimed to be able to avoid making mistakes, blah, 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 by being a systematic thinker. So anyway, you see how there are two things that happened. One thing was exaggeration by the Catholic Church and then later on the Protestants of falsely interpreting things in the Bible. And then the reaction to that was people like John Locke who said, look, we're not going to be subject to the dogma of the church anymore. We're going to be free thinkers and try and figure things out in the best way possible with our reason and logic. So we see one thing, there's an exaggeration, the Catholic Church, and then Protestantism also, and then there's a reaction to that, right? And both things lead people to wrong conclusions. Okay, so the first point that they make in modern education is there's no God. If you believe in God, that's okay. That's your story. But the reality is science, reason, and logic. Then the second thing they explain is that you can learn about life by empiricism, which is the theory that all knowledge is derived from the senses and sense experience. So this was stimulated by the development of experimental science that started like in the 14th, 15th, 16th century, and it developed, especially in the 17th and 18th century. And it was expounded mostly by John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. All three were Britishers, and they were philosophers. So I'm not going to go into their philosophy, but they influenced this Enlightenment period, so-called. And the atheistic humanism does not believe in God or the supernatural. It believes that this life is the only life we have, and they're skeptical of the supernatural or divine. And it involves a commitment to moral values and moral autonomy. Moral autonomy means you don't accept anybody as a guru. You are the guru. So this is completely what we call antithetical to Krishna consciousness. Antithetical, look that word up. It's a very good word. Antithetical. Antithetical.
Directly opposed or contrasted.
Yeah, it's
Mutually
directly opposed to Krishna consciousness and Vedic, the whole Vedic culture. And this is the theory of how to teach young kids, and it's being practiced today. So the first thing is there's no God. The second thing is that when you die, everything is over. And the third thing is, well, because there's no God, therefore you're not responsible to anybody. You are responsible yourself. And when you die, it's all over. Therefore, the goal of life is to have as much sense gratification as possible. That's number 3. And the way to do that is to have money. And the way to get money, well, there's different ways. You can beg, you can borrow, or you can steal, or you can become an IT person, or an AI person, or you can become a businessman, or whatever. But then, you gotta have money, because without money you can't have sustained sense gratification. So this is why, by the time you graduate from high school and ready to go to college, you have become a materialist. You've learned the material conception of life. Eat, sleep, and be merry, and get as much sense gratification as possible. So the buzzwords for that is, I want to be happy. Right? So how are you going to be happy? Well, some people get happy by smoking marijuana. Other people get happy by engaging in illicit activities. Some people get happy just by sports, listening to sports, basketball, football. Other people get happy by making money. Some people get happy by sleeping in. So all this is based on the body. Pleasing the body. There's no question of pleasing God. God is a story. It's not not realistic as far as the material conception of life goes. Okay? So, those three things are enough to make a person a materialist. No God, nothing after death, therefore work hard and play hard. Play hard means try and get as much sense gratification as possible. Work hard means get as much money as you can because you can spend it all, and for continual sense gratification. This is the material conception of life. But there are more things. That's only the preparation of a person to be dedicated to the material conception of life. After that, it's don't believe in Shastras. Don't believe in religious scripts, the Bible or the Vedas. They're only stories. You have to believe in science. And then everything is relative. There are no absolutes. And this is, have you ever heard anything like this? Everything is relative? Huh?
I think I might.
You think or you stink? Which one? Did you hear it? Everything is relative. There are no
Everything
absolutes.
depends.
What?
Like everything depends on like what happened before.
Well, what did happen before?
Like something like you'd like release an apple and it might like fall or something like that.
Okay, so it falls, and so what did you learn by releasing the apple?
Like if something is relative to another. Yeah, cause and effect.
Well, that's a demonstration of the law of gravity, right? You
Yeah.
release an apple and it falls down, right? So you can release it like on two sides of a building. Actually, the experiment was there was the leading power of Pisa, not pizza, but Pisa,
Yeah.
right? So on one side is a little bit lower than the other side. So they held an apple on both sides and they dropped it, and they both hit the ground at the same time. So that means that there was some force acting on the two apples, but they were not differentiated too much. They sort of hit the ground at the same time. So then, based on that, the assumption was that there's a universal force of gravity in the whole universe, and it's acting in a uniform way. And so that was a big discovery, right? And Newton spent a lot of time thinking about that. I think the original experiment was by Galileo, but based on that, Newton's laws of motion were developed, and it works for macroscopic bodies under the force of gravity. So gravity was one of the first universal forces that were, let's say, identified by scientists. Later on you have electromagnetism and other things. So anyway, the idea that there's nothing absolute, everything is relative, this fixes you to become an impersonalist or an atheist. There's no God, you die, there's nothing after death, therefore all of life is sense gratification. Don't believe in any Shastras, Bible or Torah or Vedas, and everything is relative. Now you're really fixed into being a materialist the rest of your life. And then after that, to be convinced that I am the body, that there's no soul. If there is a soul, it's material also. It's only made of matter. the complete rejection of the existence of a soul and spiritual world. Have you ever met anyone like that in high school?
Yeah.
They don't believe in a soul, they don't believe there's God, they don't believe there's a spiritual world. It's all fairy tales, right?
Yeah. A lot of people.
A lot. See, because the school is teaching that in a very subtle way. In a very subtle, S-U-B-T-L-E, right? Means, look that up, subtle, S-U-B-T-L-E. See, this what we're discussing today. We're discussing the material conception of life that is being taught to you in school. What does it say?
So delicate or precise as to be difficult to analyze or describe.
You see? If let's say you're not hearing what I'm saying, would you figure out on your own that this is what school is doing to you? No, you would not be able to figure it out. And what you just said is the proof. Many people believe the soul doesn't exist. Many kids in school don't believe there's a soul, they don't believe there's a spiritual world, don't believe there's a God. How did that happen to them? By the modern education, which is based on atheistic humanism. And atheistic humanism rejects the existence of God and rejects what's called supernatural and just focuses on imperfect human beings. Now, you would have to...
Unknown caller.
You would have to go for maybe 40, 50 years before you figure out these things. So I'm saving you from figuring this out in such a late period in your life. I'm explaining to you what is actually happening to you right now. And it's happening in a subtle way. What does it mean again, subtle?
So delicate or precise as to be difficult to analyze or describe.
Yeah. You can't, you don't really understand what's happening to you right now. You'll only understand much later on, and most people never understand. See? And the whole idea that I don't have a soul, I am not eternal, I just have this material body, but maybe I could be eternal if science advances quick enough. See? So they're promising, like we told you about Calico. Do you know what Calico is? It's a company started by Google. The founders of Google invested $1 billion in this company. $1 billion. It's a lot of money, right? $1 billion. That's $1,000 million to start this company, to find a cure for death. Now, of course, if you read, what their purpose is, that's a secondary purpose. Their primary purpose is life prolongation, right? To prolong life. But their ultimate goal is immortality. That's the same thing Hiranyakashipu wanted, right? A demon, right? And also Ravana. So, they're promising it, and they're willing to put up $1 billion, but they'll never reach that goal because it's the law of nature. As long as you have a material body, you're going to go through 4 stages. You know what those 4 stages are? You know what the 4 stages are of the material body? Go ahead.
Birth, death, old age, and disease.
Yeah. So those are laws of nature. Now, no matter how much research they do, how much money they throw at it, they're not going to be able to solve these 4 stages of the human body. And, but even these people who want to be immortal, they reject the existence of the soul and God. So you see, it's an impossible situation. It's impossible for them to be happy. It's impossible for them to be successful. It's impossible for them to overcome the laws of material nature. Okay. So then, this idea that everything is relative and that there are no absolutes, that solidifies that a person is going to be a materialist the rest of their life. Okay. Then, on top of all that, they believe part of the material conception of life is that science has been able to make skyscrapers, big roads, cars, cell phones, and internet, and all these things, you know, submarines, rockets, airplanes, and so forth, and therefore they don't think that anything is beyond this. They just think that these type of material creations are the highest, let's say, accomplishment of the culture and science, and they'll keep inventing new things all the time. But they don't accept the existence of a spiritual world. They don't accept any supernatural powers. They're very proud of their scientific research. So, therefore, they don't think that there are any activities beyond scientific research and production of scientific inventions. So therefore, they're not aiming for liberation from the cycle of birth and death. They're aiming simply to live as long as they can and enjoy as much sense gratification as they can, and to prolong life as much as they can. If they could find a way to stop death, that would be ideal. That's impossible. So they don't really understand what the real aim of life is. So if you ask your friends, let's say, what are you striving for in life? What's your goal? What would they say? What would they say? What would they say?
To be rich, maybe.
Okay, that's one thing. Yes?
Like have a good family, become a millionaire, like
Become a billionaire.
yeah.
Right. That's the same thing she said, become rich. Anybody else? What would they say?
A lot of my friends want to play in the NFL.
National football.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else? What would your friends say? If you ask them, what's your goal in life?
Maybe to like get into a good college. I don't know.
Okay, get into college. How about you, Krishna?
Money.
Money is the honey. Yeah, so is anyone saying, I want to go back to Godhead? No, no way, Jose. See? But they don't think there's any goal beyond, making rockets and cars and, stadiums and internet and social media and so forth. Right? So they don't know that the aim of life is realization of the absolute truth, or Krishna. And they're captivated by external features of the material world, and therefore they don't know what liberation is. And everyone is very eager to receive honor and be, in other words, honored and be glorified, and they're disturbed by dishonor. And their actions to be famous, and even if they do become religious, it's only because they want to be famous, not because they love God. So you have a lot of people like that, the preachers, the television preachers. I don't know if you've ever heard them, they glorify themselves, they do crazy things, they do healings and things like that seem miraculous, but actually the whole thing is a fraud. And they collect millions of dollars by tricking people to think that they can make blessings, or they have some sacred water, or they have the cure for all disease or something like that. And the whole thing is cheating and giving false hope to people. Okay, and then besides this very, very, let's say, very, very fanatic desire to be honored all the time, they function always in dualities in terms of good and bad, happiness and distress, heat and cold, success and failure, love and hate. They're always troubled by these dualities. Right? So, does that happen to any of you? You love someone, you hate someone, you sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's hot, sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not successful. Do you get disturbed by these things? Yeah. Somebody likes you, somebody doesn't like you. This is going on. These dualities, functioning in duality is a symptom of the material concept of life, and it's something that bewilders people. And sometimes young people commit suicide because they got too many cancellations on the people that follow them on the internet, and all of a sudden they cancel you. Right? Sometimes the kids commit suicide because they got canceled. A parent takes the cell phone away from the kid commits suicide. Or doesn't allow them to play video games, the kid commits suicide or gets really angry or kills the parent. It happens all the time in the United States now and around the world. Or they're so much into playing video games that they're not eating properly, they're not sleeping properly, and they die. That's happened also, right? Especially in China. Is that right?
Yeah. Japan as well.
So you see, all these things are happening because people are functioning in being basically bewildered by dualities of life: love and hate, happiness and distress, success and failure, and so forth. And then people want to earn money and spend it, and usually they buy junk things. Right? Like, for example, they buy bubble gum, they buy video games, they buy Barbie dolls, they buy dinosaurs. They just sold a dinosaur bones, $12.5 million. And all those bones are made up, they're not real. Yeah. So, people buy crazy things. And they just want to spend their money, right? And accumulating junk things that they don't really need. Right? Okay. So, in summary, what is taught in mundane schools? No God, only junk science, and many changing theories based on speculation. That there's nothing after death, sense gratification is goal of life, earn money and spend it for sense grat. Do not believe in Shastras or speculate about Shastras to support one's theories about life and God, etc. Everything is relative, there are no absolutes. The belief that everything is an illusion, and thus one can play with the imagined illusions because there are no laws of karma or reward and punishment for our activities. That's another thing. They don't believe in the law of karma. They don't believe that there's reward and punishment given by God. Right? So what are the real achievements of this scientific speculators and social engineers and other nonsense people who are so-called enlightened persons who make up theories to mislead people away from godly life? So what are these achievements that they've attained? Well, one, scientists have created weapons of mass destruction. Write this down. Scientists have created weapons of mass destruction. They haven't created a way to live eternally. They haven't created a vaccine that'll stop you from getting any kind of sickness. Right? But the most successful thing they've created are weapons of mass destruction. And we're seeing it right now in the Russia-Ukraine war. Right? And we saw it in World War II in the United States threw 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Okay, so the scientists have created weapons of mass destruction, 1. 2, the IT people, IT meaning information technology, people have created weapons of mass distraction. They distract your mind. Your mind goes, all over here, there, everywhere, right? The politicians, okay, so the IT people have created weapons of mass distraction. The politicians have created weapons of mass deception. You know what the word deception means? Lies, more lies, false promises, just misleading you.
Wait, who did the trickery?
Politicians. And they create these weapons of mass deception, such as transgender, gender neutrality, critical race theory, identity politics to pit one race against another, race baiting, one can have 2 daddies and 2 mommies, and so forth. All these crazy ideas, it's called mass deception. All right? Number 4, Hollywood and Bollywood and social media have created weapons of mass perversion. Intoxication, illicit sex, belief in man gods, meat eating, frivolous sports, glorifying selfish wealth development, and a life of luxury and self-indulgence. So, weapons of mass perversion. That's Hollywood and Bollywood. And false brahmanas have created weapons of mass materialistic pursuit of religion, karma kanda, in the name of religion, Satyanarayana puja, this thing, that thing. It's all materialism. There's nothing spiritual about it. That's the false brahmanas. The Mayavadis have created weapons of mass cancellation of Vedic culture. The Mayavadis believe the material world does not exist. They believe that the spiritual world does not exist. They believe that the individuality does not exist. They believe that God doesn't exist. They believe that there's only one thing that exists, that's the Brahma Jyoti, it's light. And so they've canceled everything. The material world and the spiritual world and individuality. They canceled it all.
What did the false brahmanas create?
They created weapons of mass materialistic pursuit of religion. And the industrialists have created weapons of mass pollution. And Prabhupada actually talks about this. He talks about the Tata factories in India. He says it's they just pollute the, you know, the Ganges and the atmosphere and everything with all the things that they make. And the feminists have created weapons of mass, the feminists and the false behavioral pundits have created weapons of mass disruption of harmonious married life. How to ruin married life. That's the feminists and the false behavioral pundits. Those are men, usually. The psychologists and psychiatrists, all those people. They've created weapons of mass disruption of harmonious married life.
Could you explain that? I could not understand.
Well, they make married life impossible. They want to make, they say that, you know, women and men's roles should be the same.
Oh, I got it.
You got it? Right. So they say that, you know, men should not have priority in certain roles. Men and women should have the same roles in life. So that'll ruin a marriage. But there are other things also. Women should be equal competitive purushas, enjoyers, as men. And even women can live without men in their lives. Also, the false propaganda that it is all right for men to beat their wives, such as in the Ramcharitmanas, and other fanatic theories of the superiority of men to exploit women or anyone for sense gratification. So, these are the achievements of the speculators, the scientists, the social engineers, and other nonsense people. And they make it impossible to be happy. They make it impossible to be happy. Now, let's hear what you have to say. Do you think this is right, or you think this is wrong? Just be honest. Because someone will say, well, wait a minute. If this is right, then everything I believe in is wrong. I believe that I can be happy by getting an education, to go into IT and making money. And I can be happy. I don't really need Krishna to be happy. I can be happy just by making money and being successful in life, materially. So if you believe this, then you say, wait a minute, this whole thing is false. This whole culture, the whole educational system, everything I'm believing in and hoping for is false. Anybody want to say anything? So in other words, everyone has desires and hopes. Now, if you are basing your desires and hopes on the material conception of life, you'll be a failure, guaranteed. Marriage will be a failure, happiness will be a failure, your career will be a failure in the sense that it doesn't really satisfy you. In the beginning, yes, but as you go along, you'll see, wait a minute, this is not really what I wanted. So you'll become confused at one point. Just like, you know, you look at Vladimir Putin right now. He's confused. Everything he thought that was going to happen is not happening. And he was sure to be the winner of this war, and now it's not sure at all, right? So this is what happens to everyone on different levels of life. That they think, oh no, I'm sure now this is definitely going to happen. I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. And it turns out the opposite. And why? Because if we don't understand the laws of nature, that's the next week's discussion, we will make too many mistakes in life, and all our hopes and dreams will be vanquished, defeated. Because we don't have a realistic understanding of life. We've been misled by modern education. Okay, any questions? So, did you have more homework, or that was about it? Yeah, you
That's
finished.
actually,
Yeah, anybody, you had some homework. Let's hear what you have.
He wanted to read his homework first. I have both versions.
Okay, speak louder. I'm not saying you're mumbling, but your volume is always low. So raise the volume
Okay.
so everyone can understand what you're saying, and speak slower. So Aditya is going to read his homework. Is that right?
yeah.
Okay, go right ahead. Speak slowly and loudly. 1, 2, 3, go. Are you waiting for the computer? Okay, that's a significant statement, yes.
I didn't give any Shastra evidence.
That's all right, just go ahead. You didn't absolutely have to, because that the purport has all the information in it. Go ahead.
One unique quality of the Lord is Gauti, which means knowing the past, present, and future, which is basically knowing everything. Also, Krishna is the oldest personality, and he is the origin of everything.
Origin, not urgent. Origin. Okay?
Krishna is smaller than the smallest. A soul is 1/10,000 the tip of a hair, and Krishna resides in the heart of the soul.
Perfect.
And by Krishna, all these planetary systems are sustained.
That's a huge thing. Sustaining all the planetary systems. Could you do that? Is there anybody you know that is able to do that? Sustain all the planetary systems in their orbits and things like that? Can you do that, Monica? You think if you work out or something, you'd be able to do it? Work out in the gym? Huh?
People with big egos probably think they could do that.
Very good, that's true. But they can't. Go ahead.
Saint Vishwamitra, actually, I think he tried to create a universe, but it was too much
Who?
for him, right?
Vishwamitra Muni?
Yeah.
No, he did create, partially he created an alternate universe.
Yeah, he wasn't able to maintain it. It was too
Right.
much for him.
Right. Go ahead.
It is stated that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these planets and systems of galaxies.
Just imagine how much energy he has. You know how big the sun is? The sun is over 100 times bigger than the Earth. Over 100 times. We can't even deal with the Earth. How are you going to deal with the sun? And Krishna's maintaining all of that with his energy. Imagine how much energy he has. That's it? Okay. And you did homework?
Yeah. I only used Bhagavad Gita 8.9, so it's like the same points as Rihanna did.
Wow, there were more points. He didn't cover all the points. Maybe you did.
So the homework was to read the purport of Bhagavad Gita 8.9 and list off the qualities of Krishna.
Yeah.
So the translation lists 11 qualities of Krishna. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental beyond this material nature.
That's 11 right there.
In the purport, Prabhupada lists additional qualities of Krishna. which include knowledge of the past, present, and future being all-pervading, and is at a point beyond which material argument, logic, and speculation could touch.
Very good. See, now you could have done the homework just by reading you didn't even read the purport. Okay? But you were really clever. You said, why? What's valuable to do any research? You didn't have to do any research. You just had to read the purport, right? And write down the point. Okay, so now for next week. I want you to write down what you want to be. That doesn't mean you become a bee. What you want to be. Write down what you want to be.
Like when you grow up?
Yeah.
Do we have to answer this honestly?
Yeah. You want to be a thief or whatever, I don't know. I don't care. Just write down what you want to be. And how you're going to reach that goal. And be honest. All right? So let me see hands. Who's going to do homework for next week? 1, 2, 3. I want to take a picture. So you have two guys right here not going to do the homework, right?
Maybe.
Maybe. Maybe, baby. Okay. This is all right. Okay, very good. And one maybe and one no.
I don't know if I'm going to.
You're, I don't know. Okay. Well, maybe is a little better than I don't know. Okay, yeah, write down what you want to be and how you're going to achieve your goal of what you want to be. Okay? All right, are there any questions, any comments about today's points? Today we discussed the obstacles to Krishna consciousness, and the main obstacle is modern education. Because everything you're learning in school is antithetical to Krishna consciousness. Antithetical, opposed to Krishna consciousness. So therefore, you're not really going to a school. You're going to an organization of propaganda for materialistic life, and it's normal. Why? Because if they don't teach you to be a consumer, they'll go bankrupt. The country will go bankrupt. The country is based on producing things people don't really need. And then once you produce something that people don't need, then you have to propagandize that thing so they believe that they need it. Right? So this is what's going on. This is one. The United States is a consumer is a consumer economy. It's based on people shopping. If you stop shopping, the whole country would come to a stop, right? You say, well, how can I stop shopping? I need to eat food. Well, no, you could grow food. You could grow it yourself in your kitchen, just by sprouts. You could live. Pennies on a dollar. You would not have to. You don't even need land. You can sprout. Every 5 days you get a new crop. If you sprout with the 6 or 7 different containers, you would get all your nutrition and hardly spend maybe $20, $30 a month. But you say, well, then, but how do I pay the rent? And well, yeah, you have to work to pay the rent. But you could live in a tiny house off the grid. Then you don't have to pay rent. So there's many ways of getting around being caught in this consumer society. But everyone's being taught to be a consumer because they keep the society the way it is going. And what happens when you're a consumer? You take money from your pocket and you put it into somebody else's pocket, like Jeff Bezos, Amazon, you see, or Bill Gates, or Larry Ellison, or Larry Page. You're taking the money from your pocket and putting it in their pocket. Right? And their pocket is much bigger than your pocket. But that is the consumer, let's say, the consumer society. You have to be convinced that you need to buy things. Like, you know, if the new iPad comes out, you got to get it, right? If the next IT system or whatever, the next version of the cell phone comes out, you have to buy it, right? And there's a lot of propaganda. It's called publicity. A lot of publicity. Why you have to get this one because it's much better than the previous one. So, and then or the Tesla. You know, you have to get a Tesla car because it's the new wave. You know, you'll stop global warming by driving a Tesla. It's not true, by the way. You make it worse by driving a Tesla. But we don't want to shatter the image of Tesla. Right? The whole thing is cheating. It's all very intelligent cheating. And you're being trained in school to be a consumer and to be an atheist. Okay, Hari Bol, thank you very much. All glories to Shiva Prabhupada.
So
Oh,
Maharaj,
that's some good news.
yeah. So Maharaj, about the
That's some good news. Okay, go ahead.
yeah. So about the lot of people like talk about the secularism, right? So
Secularism.
yeah. So secularism means they think that this problem is mostly because of the even religion, because
Religion has caused all the
religion causing this problem. So they keep people away from religion, right? So that's a lot of people say that, oh, this is causing issues rather than creating harmony in the society.
Yeah.
So that's their viewpoint, right? Especially in India also, because there are so many, there are hundreds of religions. Everybody has their own small religion. Not only Hindu, under Hindu also there are so many branches, right? So they always keep fighting. Even in the old days also, Shaivites and Vaishnavism. If the king becomes Vaishnava, they'll fight with the Shaivites. They always have a rivalry. Even they are
The politicians fight.
correct. Politicians also
And
fight.
the businessmen fight.
Yeah.
It's not only the religious people fight. Politicians.
But when politician takes use of this religion, at least in India, they takes the use of this. Most of the politicians in India, they use this religion as their weapon to win. So that's their point, like how. So for these secular people, Maharaj, how we convince? Like they say, that, okay, no, there's religion, because religion, people we know that it's our interpretation. Right? It's all about interpretation. Like, because no any religion in this world doesn't teach fight with each other or kill someone, right? I mean, if you know the correct meaning of that religion. Yeah, Islam to some extent. Yeah. They might have been misinterpreted over a period of time, right? Or no, it's just original. Maybe the over a period of time somebody just diverted. They might not got the correct at the beginning. But then how come Maharaj, religion is not something man can create, right? I mean, religion is something is not somebody can, oh, I want to create my own religion. So there must be something, some plan of Krishna, like.
No, but your question is a good question.
So,
We go, like the government,
yeah,
we want secular.
yeah,
Because all throughout the history, there have been what's called religious wars. Therefore, they needed a religious country. The government that needs one religion over another.
yeah. Because we see that at least in India, Hindu, Muslim, all the time, every day this is problems, every day. Because religious goes to the what the point, their point is, once you become religious, you become extremist. Because you are biased with some philosophy, some principles, which is conflicting with other person's principles and beliefs, and it creates natural hatred among two people. Suppose I am Hindu, you are Muslim, you have your own beliefs about the God, I have my own beliefs about God. The more I am more religious and more strong in my belief, I am not accepting your beliefs, and that creates a natural conflict between the space between the two people.
Let me think about it.
Yeah. So I mean,
Wow. She made her own birthday cake.
What do you think?
I love it. I just like it's just music to my ears. I just love it. I just love it. I cannot agree more than anyone every point. Yeah, it's just like in my friend circle, like my circle in my office. I feel like an outlier sometimes.
What?
I feel like an outlier, like I'm an outlier. It's just good to have this company here, so it feels like I'm normal. Like if my eating habits are like Vaishnava eating, I really like I lived in Germany for a long time before coming here, and like they would just not understand. But it's hard for me to explain
In
it.
Germany, you go to a train station, you'll see a guy, he has a piece of bread in one hand and a sausage in the other. He bites the sausage, chews it, and then bites the bread.
Exactly.
That was the grossest thing I ever saw in the world. And they do that a lot.
It's very common.
The same college, mother.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, she was my senior. You passed out in 2006? 5. Oh yeah, 5. I passed in 2007 from my college. So, yeah, I could. Yeah, we both graduated from no, from VIT. It's an institute in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
I did some more education after that.
See, what's happening is people don't understand what's going on.
You are absolutely right. Like that subtle propagandas, they are so true. I have not watched movies for a very long time. I just don't find them like exciting enough and interesting enough. Like this subtle like masala they would spread on every single movie, which is mostly about all the points that they were talking about. They glorify that, or they like just ascertain that if you visit, they are actually valid points. So that's why I find it very difficult to find a movie that I want to watch. Just literally close to nothing. So it's very subtle.
Movies now, they're just teaching perversion.
Yeah, right, exactly. And they and not just perversion, like even more than that, like they would glorify every single other mass destruction, this and that, everything that you said, they would glorify that. Like, there was some movie which will confirm that it's not a bad thing to do that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to be to follow, to do consumerism. And they will glorify that. Like there's a movie which was very popular. It's titled as You Will Not Get Life Twice.
Yeah, so
It's
it's
really
like with
unbelievable.
everything.
Like, you'll never not get
Only
life.
this one life.
It's only this life you have to live it. Yeah, it's I can't agree more.
Yeah, there's no God, and you have to death, there's nothing. Actually, give it to me for tomorrow. I'll read it all tomorrow. Yeah, so there's only this stuff.
And just about education, like my kids are very small right now, but even then, I already see they have like conflicting thoughts in their school, so they come back and then they kind of confirm it and
Well, it's already at the diet.
yeah.
They're trying to teach them to be vegetarian, they're seeing kids eating meat.
Exactly, it's the opposite of what they see at school. Everything else is
We should send them to our school.
yeah. The little one is just 2 years old right now.
Yeah, that's okay, we can college. Our school only goes up to
5-year-olds, right?
At least I have a vegetarian
Yeah.
Krishna. And now, I did it right from 2 or 3 years old to teach them, before right there, it's diabolical what they're doing. And this whole thing about Black Lives Matter.
I mean, every life should matter, right? Like,
Yeah.
In my office, I think like any other company, my CEO is like completely left leaning, and so his thought process is the day this Black Lives Matter protest or whatever you can call it was happening, so he gave everybody a half-hourly leave to go and join it, and he was leading from the front. Yeah. And he said, I went there, you should also go there. And then
White guy?
yes, and then the next thing happened is ever since this whatever gender confusion has happened, so he started praising people who would come up with ideas for something as simple as next to your name write a pronoun.
Yeah, you have to have
Everybody has to introduce themselves in our country before giving a presentation.
You can't mix up the program.
So you have to have it on your profile, on your email signature all the time. That I am he, she, it, they, whatever, like all the pronouns. And in fact, my most shocking point was when my 5-year-old kid was taking an online library class during the pandemic. They said, so what pronoun do you go with? And then like my daughter was really confused. She said like, what is that? They are confused. It's just
They'll only be confused in the beginning, then they'll go along with it.
exactly. They're trying to make it sound very common
It's
and
part of
normal.
the-
It's just part of nature, and so there's nothing special or different about it. And so I guess over time maybe more people will listen to those thoughts and maybe start actually
No, because they
adopting them.
start in kindergarten.
Yes, they start. Yeah. That was really shocking.
Tejo asked for
At
more
one
people
point,
to
I'm thinking to
to
move back to
adapt
India
them.
because of this kind of education. Like, no, whether I go for private school or public school, it will not matter. It's just how it is. Is it? I don't know honestly. For a long time, I've been out of it. I don't know.